All right, welcome Algebra 2. Let's do this. Game plan for today is, what is the connection with the solutions of a function and its graph? Here, for the past few days, well actually first, let's do this first. What I'd like you to do is have this in your notes. Just pause the video. Make sure you have this in your lovely notes for graphing and solving quadratics, how to solve quadratic equations, and we'll practice this soon. For the past few days, what have we been doing pretty well with? If I have a function like this x squared plus x minus 6, you have been very good at plugging in the x values to find the y value and then creating the graph, right? Now here, to do this every time is very time extensive. Grab your best friend, say hello to them, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to find the points for a graph by just using the calculator instead of like plugging in every number one at a time. So let's try that first. Here, what I want you to do is let's reset the calculator. That's the first thing we should do. How do you reset the calculator? You hit second plus 712. Okay? If you want, write that in your notes. Second plus 712. So that's the command to reset the calculator. Okay, now that the calculator is reset, where do we go to plug in the function into the calculator, right? Like, what's the function we're going to use? It's this x squared plus x minus 6, right? We want to put it into the calculator. So where do you go? You go to y equals, and let me zoom out a little bit so you can see. And let me move this to the side. Okay, what we do is we go to y equals, and we're gonna plug this in, right? So what are we gonna plug in? We're gonna plug in x. Now where is the x or the variable? It's right here next to alpha. X squared plus x minus 6. Okay? Now here, notice that if I hit graph, oh my gosh, it gives us the graph, right? It looks nice and pretty. But then how are we going to take the graph and put it on our paper? We need the points. Okay, well, where can we get the points on the calculator? Notice that within your calculator, you have commands that are in baby blue, right? So notice that above graph, you have this lovely word of table. So because it's in baby blue, what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit second graph. And then here, here is the table, right? This is my x value and this is my y value. So notice that when I plug in, let's say, for example, 0, right? What happens when you plug in 0 in here? What do you get? It's 0 squared plus 0 minus 6. But if you do the algebra, it should just be negative 6. And what is that point? It's 0, negative 6, right? But look, it's right here in the calculator for us. Like when I plug in 0, I get negative 6. When I plug in 1, right? What would I do? It would be 1 squared plus 1 minus 6. Well, you could do this in your head, right? 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. And it's right there for you. So here, it's very nice to just get the points, right? And notice that we have it for 0 to 4 right now, but where are the negatives? How do I get to negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4? I just go up. I just go up in the calculator and oh my gosh, it's all there for you. So what I'd like you to do is plug in the let's put in the y values here. This is negative 6, 0, negative 4, negative 6, right? Negative 6, negative 4, 0, 6, and 14, right? And 14. Okay. So now here, let's plug in, and also, what should we do? This is my x, this is my y, so this is the point. It's negative 4, negative 6. What's the next one? Negative 3, 0. Negative 2, negative 4, right? Negative 1, negative 6. 1, negative 4. 2, 0. 3, 6. And 4, 14. Okay? What I want you to do is take these points And let's graph it, right? What I want you to do is pause the video, take your time, and set up your x-axis, set up your y-axis, and plug these points onto the graph, right? And we should already know the idea of what the graph looks like, right? Because if I hit graph, this is what the graph will look like. Now here, let's just find the exact points, okay? So what I'm going to do is, so you pause the video and try this, and let's say you're done, or you want to see how I do it, it's right here, but you should really try it by yourself, right? So how can I label my x-axis? 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is negative. Right. And then I can label the x-axis. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, right? And let's plug in the points, right? How would I go for the first point here? Negative 4, negative 6, where would that go, right? 4 to the left, 6 down, so that's my point. What's the next one? 3 to the left, and notice here my y value is 0, right? So I just stay on the x-axis, right? I don't go up or I don't go down. Okay, next one is negative 2, negative 4. Wait a minute. Why does that feel weird? Oh, pause. When x is negative 4, yeah, I was sorry. This should be positive 6. I'm so sorry. Yeah, because I was looking like this. Sorry, this point is wrong. Sorry, ignore that point. Because there should be a 6 here. Sorry. Like here, when you look at the table, my bad. When you have negative 4, the x value is positive 6, not negative 6. So sorry. Okay, so then the next one is negative 2, negative 4, which is here. Oh, sorry, let me fix the camera angle. Negative 1, negative 6 is here. 0, negative 6 is here. And notice, let's put a point over here, because for the parabola, it has to go something like this, right? When it's 1, negative 4. When it's 2, is 0. When it's 3, it's 6. And then let's ignore this point over here. 414, we don't need it, because it's going to be somewhere here in Carajo land. Okay, so here, how do I draw my parabola? I'll go like this. I'm going to draw the arrow, and I'm going to go down, and then bam. This is the graph. Okay. So that's it. So this is the graph. Here, what we're going to do next is we're going to look at this part over here. Let's take the function x squared plus x minus 6, right? So if I have x squared plus x minus 6, what am I asked to do for the first part? I'm asked to factor. So here, let's think about your factoring skills needed to factor this trinomial, right? We have 3 parts, and hopefully this looks very familiar. What is my a value? My a value is 1. So pause the video, and what would be the voice, what do you have to say to figure out how to factor this, right? Pause the video and think about it. What do you have to say? And try and find it, right? What two numbers when I multiply is negative 6, but when I add is positive 1, right? And how does that factor? It'll be, what two numbers when I multiply is negative 6, but when I add is positive 1. this will be x plus 3, x minus 2, right? Because 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, 3 minus 2 is 1. And then bam, we factored it. Great. Now here, let's take a look at what this question is saying. For what values of x will make the function f of x equal to 0? The idea is, what number, when I plug it into here, for this function of x squared plus x minus 6, what number when I plug it in, I get 0? Like, what happens if I plug in 1, right? If I plug in 1, do I get 0? When I plug in 2, do I get 0? What about 3? What about 4? And notice, you already did this, or we already found the two values, right? You see, when I plug in negative 4, I get 6. Notice that when I plug in negative 3, I get 0. And if you want to check it, right, what is negative 3 squared plus a negative 3 minus 6, right? And I'll just show that over here real quick. That is 9 minus 3 minus 6, which is 6 minus 6, which is 0, right? That's the question I'm asking. I'm asking, what number, when I plug it into f of x, do I get 0, right? And one of the numbers is negative 3, x equals negative 3, and is there another one, right? And it looks like the other number that when I plug it in, it's also 2. 2 is the other number. When I plug in 2 into this function, I also get 0. If we could check, right? If you want, just check it real quick. What is 2 squared plus 2 minus 6? That is 4 plus 2 minus 6, which is 6 minus 6, which is 0, right? So when I plug in 2 for x into this function, I also get 0. So notice these are the two values, right? But now the question is, how do you figure out how to do this with no calculator? Because right now, how did we find what those x values were? We used the calculator and we plugged in numbers. The question should be, how do you do this with no calculator? And here, this is the idea of solving a quadratic equation. What we're going to do is we're going to take this function of x squared plus x minus 6 and we're going to make it equal to 0, right? How do I know what does it mean to be quadratic? When the highest exponent is 2, we have a quadratic equation, and this is quadratic. It's different than something like we did on Monday. Look at this graph over here will be linear, right? Because the highest exponent, there's a 1 over here, right? So this will be something different. When the highest exponent is 2, we say it's quadratic. And then how do you solve a quadratic equation? We make sure that the quadratic equation is equal to 0. And the reason why you want to do that is so you can factor. Because watch what happens. Here, how did we factor this? We had x plus 3, x minus 2, right? Because when you take a look at this quadratic, when you take a look at this part right here, it's in the form of a equals 1, right? So we could do this factoring technique. Now, what you do is, because we have 0, what you're allowed to say is x plus 3 equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0. And we still haven't gone for the reason of why you're allowed to do this, but for now, we'll just accept it. And then hopefully by tomorrow or next week, we'll go over the reason of why you're allowed to do this. Only if you have 0. Right? 0 is your best friend when solving quadratics, right? So then how do you solve for this? This is negative 3, negative 3. Like if I have x plus 3 is 0, how do I get x by itself? I subtract 3, subtract 3. If I have x minus 2 is 0, how do I get x by itself? I do plus 2, plus 2. And notice, what do I get? I get x equals negative 3, and I get x equals positive 2. But let's think about that for a second. What did we just solve right now? Right? What does this x equals negative 3 represent? And what does x equals 2 represent? Right? What does this mean? Right? Let's take a look back. Notice it represents two things. One, -3 and +2, right? These are the values that make the function equal to 0. But what does it represent on the graph? You see here, when I have x equals -3 and I have x equals 2, if I have the parabola over here, what is the connection between the solutions and its graph? It represents the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts of the graph are the solutions. The solutions to this function are right here. They're -3 and +2. So like if I know that the graph, for example, is going to intersect, if the solutions are like 4 and -2, then I know that the graph has to look something like this, where I have -2 here and 4 over here, and this is my graph. If I know those are the solutions. Okay? What I'd like you to do is take a second and try and answer this question, these two questions. Right? And then we'll go over it together in class, but then try this one. Graph the function, right? Graph the function, and hopefully, please use your calculator, and then solve for this function by using your factoring techniques and making it equal to 0. Okay, I'll see you in class.